Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. We're so glad that you're here. I'm going to do a sound check. Can everybody hear me? Yay. What? I can't. Oh, this mic? Okay. Sound check here. All right. We're double good today after yesterday. I'm Ellen Morgenstern, co-chair of the Adult Education Committee, which developed Pride and Prejudice, the American Jewish Experience, over the last year. I emphasize the last year. The title for our series reflects the pride we feel as American Jews and the adversity we have faced and unfortunately still goes on. Along the way, we reached out to our wonderful colleagues, men of TRS and women of TRS, to join us in this effort, and they generously agreed to co-sponsor. We have particular thanks for Rob Moss. I don't know where you are, Rob. Okay, Rob Moss and Stephanie Tibor for all their help. Stephanie? Stephanie, you don't want to stand? Yay! We are most appreciative of the generous support of the Rabbi Berkowitz Educational Endowment Fund and the 60th Anniversary Committee, which really made the series possible. For those of you who attended services last night, you know why we selected Rabbi Balin to be our guest speaker. If you missed that, you'll see today you're in for a memorable afternoon. Today, Rabbi Balin has more thought-provoking insights to share with us on a topic with a provocative title, Is America Good for the Jews? 60 years of straddling an American Jewish divide. As a historian, she has done meticulous research on our past and will share that with us today. Her title certainly matches the challenging moment that American Jews are now coping with. Her retrospective is sure to provide a contrast between what was, what is, and what might be. Part of today's presentation will be interactive, with Rabbi Balin posing questions to you, the audience, and also giving you the opportunity to do the same of her, kind of an Oprah show. Don't be surprised when she walks down the sanctuary rows to interact with all of you. We promised you an American Jewish experience, and what's more typical of the American Jewish food experience than Jewish deli? So please join us afterwards for delicious food from Atman's Deli, including non-meat options. And we add to that a 60th anniversary raffle and a 60th anniversary quiz. And then you have to just ask yourself, what's not to like?
Good afternoon, everybody. Let's hear it for Ellen and the Adult Ed Committee. I just want to welcome everyone on behalf of the clergy team. Thank you all for being here. And share just a couple of personal notes about Rabbi Balin. Rabbi Balin graduated from Hebrew Union College as a rabbi in 2001. 2001. That's what I meant. 1991. Sorry, I got my 1991. And I was in school at the same time, but I was, in my second year in 1991, and she was finishing. And one of my very close friends was a student cantor with Rabbi Balin when she was in her last year as a student rabbi, student cantor in a small congregation in New Jersey. So I knew Rabbi Balin at that point, but what was really exciting was the next year, in 1992, Rabbi Balin was asked to teach history at HUC, to be part of the faculty, and I was in her first class. And so I know, Rabbi Balin, that your first students are always your best students, right? You always remember your first students. So I was lucky to have been a student of Rabbi Balin, and then since then, many of our clergy here who have, everyone was in the New York campus, had the delight, the honor to be students of Rabbi Balin. And so you are in for a treat. She is a professor emeritus of history of the Hebrew Union College. She retired from full-time teaching in 2016. But she still teaches and she writes a lot. She's currently working on a book about the bat mitzvah, the history of bat mitzvah, and that's what she spoke about last night, which was very interesting to hear, all the way back to the first bat mitzvah in 1922. She is also a chair of the board of the Jewish Women's Archive and professor emeritus, as I mentioned, of Hebrew Union College. She was the first woman at the New York campus to earn tenure, which is very exciting. So I'm really excited to have her, and also just to remind you that in 2 weeks, we have part 2 of this Adult Education Scholar series for our 60th anniversary, and we're featuring Rabbi Jessie Dressen, who grew up here at Temple Road of Shalom, and she will be here in 2 weeks to speak on the Friday night and then the Saturday afternoon again about the future of American Judaism. So everyone, let us welcome, with that wonderful Temple Road of Shalom welcome that we have, Rabbi Carole Balin.
Good afternoon, Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for that lovely introduction. I feel like I'm part of the family here already. I have gotten such a warm welcome from all of you. I've met a lot of you, I think, already in the congregation. I look forward to schmoozing after as well and participating in the deli and the trivia and the raffle and all the rest. I want to give a shout out especially to Cantor Alan Leader, who brought me here initially, to the director of the Adult Ed Committee, the co-chairs, Ellen Morgenstern, thank you for that introduction, and Carole Walensky. I want to give a shout out to Maxine Olson, who has been my chauffeur, there you are, my knitting partner, and already it feels like a good friend since I arrived just yesterday. I will say, I travel a lot, I see a lot of congregations, big and small, and this feels to me, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, like the biggest, smallest synagogue, temple I've ever been to. There is a spirit here of menschlichkeit, of kindness, of warmth that belies your size. I don't know if 1,700 families, 1,800 families, I mean a huge number of people in this congregation that exudes an enormous amount of intimacy and care for each other, for guests, and I am very grateful to have experienced that over my Shabbat here. So, our topic today is y'all. I guess we're in the South. I'm born and bred in Boston and live in New York now. There comes the Boston accent. I think there's someone here from Newton. We interacted before. So I want you to go back in time with me, if you will. I want you to imagine that it is June 27th, 1962. It is June 27th, 1962. July's humidity is in the offing, but on this Wednesday evening, at the start of summer in Northern Virginia, there's a whiff of a breeze still. In the parking lot, you can hear the bang of car doors as men and women and children exit their oversized cars. You can spot a dull gray Buick Riviera, a shiny blue Dodge Charger, a couple of Chevy Impalas, one black, another white. There's soft chatter and also sparks of electric anticipation of what's to come. The women wear dresses and stockings, the men suits and skinny ties, Some are in fedoras. The children are dressed for a special occasion, for it is. By the end of the night, the first Reformed Jewish congregation in Northern Virginia will be founded. A week earlier, on June 21st, 1962, Mrs. Bert Rudin, I had to really look around to find her first name, Sybil, I want to say, Nan, and Mrs. Donald Lubin, Sybil, sent postcards to Jewish families, inviting all interested parties to join an organizational meeting at the Fink Professional Building, owned by Herman Fink, at 200 Little Falls Street in the city of Falls Church, Virginia. The ladies, Mrs. Rudin and Mrs. Lubin, signed off with the hope that, quote, you and your friends want to attend this important meeting, end quote. The postcards and an announcement in the local news did the trick. Several dozen men, women, and children gathered at 8 p.m. in the Fink building on that Wednesday evening. And a little over a week later, an even larger crowd met for Shabbat services on Friday, July 5th. By then, the temperature had soared into the 80s. Larry Seif led the service, and Rose Thorman, accompanied by Adele Zacharias, provided the music. In the basement of the Fink building, people fanned the perspiration on their faces with the flyers advertising the new congregation. A temple was born. Temple Road of Shalom's birth coincided with other debuts around the world. In the very same month, in the very same year that your congregation was founded, the Rolling Stones debuted at London's Marquee Club. Sam Walmart opened his first store in Rogers, Arkansas. Queen Elizabeth II opened Buckingham Palace to the public for the first time. Andy Warhol first presented his Campbell's soup cans at the Fearless Gallery in LA. The French Chef, starring Julia Child, appeared on TV for the very first time. And the first Soviet nuclear missiles unloaded in Cuba, leading to the geopolitical crisis that would be averted by astute diplomacy. Arguably, all of these firsts would have as large an impact, arguably, they would have as large an impact on the world as the newly forming Reformed Jewish congregation did in Northern Virginia. Until the mid-20th century, most of Northern Virginia, loosely defined, and I don't need to tell you this, as the areas encompassing Fairfax, Loudoun, Arlington, and Prince William counties, as well as the independent cities of Alexandria and Falls Church, consisted of small, rural agricultural communities. This is in the mid-20th century. Aside from Alexandria, which had become a thriving port city in the mid-1800s and home to 2 Jewish congregations, there was no organized Jewish life in the region until the early 1940s. The growth of the Jewish population and the DC region as a whole coincided with President Roosevelt's arrival in Washington in 1933. Specifically, Roosevelt's efforts to expand federal agencies brought thousands of new federal employees to the area, some of whom settled across the Potomac in Northern Virginia, where property was often cheaper then. Though the region started out as a bedroom community for federal workers commuting to Washington, it quickly developed as a permanent extension of the city, with the Pentagon completed in 1943, and the Washington Dulles International Airport in 1962, the same year as Temple Rodef Shalom's founding. According to the historical record, the birth of your congregation was relatively easy, but settling on the name, far more complicated. As the perennial joke goes, with 2 Jews comes 3 opinions, at least. A small committee chaired by Mr. Bert Rubin, Nan's husband, and I believe, by the way, Sybil, Nan or Sybil? Nan. I believe Bert and Nan are well into their 90s now and living in Scottsdale, Arizona, if I'm correct. No? Wrong, different Nan.
Bert is gone and Nan is living in Creek Street.
Okay, so Nan is local?
Nan was Susan's college room.
Okay, so Nan, who is well in... Okay, Nan is well into her 90s, I would believe. Bert Rubin gathered together suggestions and compiled a long list of names. After whittling this list down of potential names for this newly forming Reformed congregation, they came up with 5 options. The committee presented these 5 finalists at a congregational meeting on July 18th, 1962, for a vote. Imagine this. The 5 names, this is why history is important, the 5 names appeared on a poster for all to see. Apparently, there was a bit of room left at the bottom of the poster, and somebody scribbled in a 6th name. It sounds like it was Nan. After extensive discussion, the choices were narrowed down to 2. And on a second ballot, the name scribbled in the last minute by Mrs. Nan Rudin, Rodef Shalom, won the day. It was a close vote, 35 to 27. 35 years ago, on Temple Rodef Shalom's 25th anniversary, Elie Wiesel delivered a lecture entitled From Generation to Generation before a crowd of 1,200 people. He had this to say about names, and I'm quoting Mr. Wiesel. In Jewish history, a name has its own history and its own memory. A name connects beings with their origins. To retrace its path is then to embark on an adventure in which the destiny of a single word, a name, becomes one with that of a community. End quote. As it turns out, there couldn't be a more descriptive name than Rodef Shalom for your congregation. Rodef Shalom derives from a Talmudic phrase uttered by the 1st century sage Hillel, the same man who said, "If I am not for myself, who will be for me? If I am only for myself, what am I? And if not now, when?" Also instructed his disciples to be among those who, quote, "love peace, ohev shalom," love peace, and pursue peace, rodef shalom, rodef shalom. How does one exactly go about becoming a rodef shalom, a rodef shalom, a pursuer of peace? The answer, according to another sage 300 years later in dialogue, of course, with Hillel in this imaginary world of Talmudic scholarship, the answer, according to this sage, about how to become a rodef shalom is to sit in another person's place. In order to seek peace, according to Avot de Rabbi Natan from the 4th century, you must go out from your own place and pursue peace among others. In order to be a rodef, a pursuer of shalom, peace, you need to go out from your own place and be with others. for 60 years. That is exactly what the members of Rodef Shalom have done. From the get-go, the 36 families who founded this congregation signed a document pledging to build, quote, a democratic Jewish religious fellowship dedicated to the spiritual and ethical values of our great Jewish heritage. That document still exists. Nicole and her husband, I think it's Nicole and her husband, are busy, I forgot your first name, I'm sorry, sir, Chris, are collecting those documents and digitally making them available to all of us. Jewish values have always grounded your community. When the congregation's first full-time spiritual leader, Rabbi Laszlo Larry Berkowitz, started at Rodef Shalom on July 1st, 1963, he described the community as good people with a set of prayer books, a pulpit Bible, a pair of silver Shabbat candlesticks, a Kiddush cup, a Torah, and me. That was Rabbi Berkowitz in 1963. In the early days, the good people of Rodef Shalom and their rabbi were wandering Jews. You met in homes and backyards, public parks and office buildings, public schools and churches, until you built a home of your own. David and Patsy Kruger donated a first Torah to the community in 1962, and it was stored in an ark designed by Nan Rudin, who was very busy back in the day, built by her father-in-law, Phil Rudin. It turns out the ark was designed to fit into the back of a station wagon. In that way, the Torah in its ark could be transported to wherever the good people of Rodef Shalom dwelled. And look where you dwell now. Even before erecting a building of your own in 1970, the good people of Rodef Shalom pursued peace. As of 1966, you joined 15 churches and synagogues in a consortium to support a daycare center at Chesterbrook Presbyterian Church for lower-income families. Not incidentally, those relationships blossomed over time, such that in 1999, your congregation joined forces with Lewinsville Presbyterian Church and Emmanuel Presbyterian Church to create Chesterbrook Residences, which opened in 2007 to provide affordable housing and assisted living to your neighbors. It makes sense that early on, the good people of Rodef Shalom found a natural home in the Reform movement, which from its inception has acted on the promise to care for those in need. When the leaders of the nascent American Reform movement gathered in Pittsburgh in 1885, they drafted a document of 8 principles. The 8th principle reads, "We deem it our duty to participate in the great task of modern times," which is still with us, "to solve on the basis of justice and righteousness the problems presented by the contrasts and evils of the present organization of society." The very year in which Temple Shalom was established, Reform Jewish leaders, including Kivi Kaplan, who was then president of the NAACP, built a Center for Social Justice in your backyard in Washington, D.C., known as the Religious Action Center, or RAC, the RAC for short. President John F. Kennedy saluted the RAC's leaders in a special tribute at the White House Rose Garden and lauded Jews for their lasting contribution to the moral fabric of American society. During the next year or two, Jewish and Black civil rights leaders met at the RAC in Washington, D.C. to draft the landmark Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. For 6 decades, the Religious Action Center of the Reform Movement in Washington, D.C. has been a hub of social justice work. Besides its partnership, which we need more than ever, with the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, to combat anti-Semitism and hate, the RAC works toward pay equity, reproductive rights, disability rights, climate justice, and other initiatives that bring healing to our broken world. What the RAC does on a national level, Temple Rodef Shalom does here in its own community as Rodef Shalom, Rodfei Shalom, pursuers of peace. Shortly after your founding, the good people of your congregation established a religious school to transmit the Jewish value of pursuing peace to the next generation. On a budget of $150, the school opened in the fall of 1962 in 5 rented classrooms at Thomas Jefferson Elementary School at the cost of $4.10 per classroom per week. 106 children showed up. Incidentally, annual membership at that time were set at $120 per family, while single adults and newly married couples paid $80 a year, and then there was junior membership at $40 a year. Today, nearly 900 children from preschool age to high school attend your religious school. Plus 300 come to your summer camp, which offers, besides lots of fun, leadership training for teens. In its infancy, this congregation celebrated its members' milestones. A bar mitzvah first for Stephen Abramson in 1962, a first bris for David Levin in July of 1963, a bat mitzvah first, which we discussed last night, for Jan Thorman on June 7th, 1963, a marriage first of Eleanor Auerbach and Richard Lind on December 15th, 1963. Today, roughly 150 13-year-olds celebrate their coming of age at TRS each year. When membership surpassed 150 families in 1963, planning began in earnest for a future temple building. 10 generous families stepped forward and purchased a 7-acre lot on Westmoreland. And in June of 1965, Rabbi Berkowitz dedicated the land. Fairfax County representatives attended the ceremony, as did, according to the historical record, a large black snake that slithered its way through the large crowd. It would take several years for a building to be erected on that land. In the meantime, the good people of Rodef Shalom got busier, pursuing peace. In the late 1960s, Irene Jones of McLean Baptist Church heard that 2 children in one family shared one pair of shoes. That meant only one child could go to school at a time. They weren't the only ones falling through the cracks. Upon further investigation, she found others in need of communal assistance. On March 10th, 1969, 19 faith communities, including Rodef Shalom, formed a coalition called SHARE that eventually came to sponsor a robust crisis intervention program, including a free food pantry, a used clothing distribution center, a furniture exchange service, free transportation for seniors, and special distributions to clients at Thanksgiving and Christmas. The good people of Rodef Shalom donated their time and their talent, along with hundreds, if not thousands, tens of thousands of supplies over the years to shore up SHARE's programs. Today, SHARE serves nearly 1,500 families, including 4,000 household members, most of whom are children. For 34 years, Rabbi Berkowitz pursued peace right alongside your community, bringing his unique background and gracious spirit to repairing the world. When the word went out that Rabbi Amy Schwartzman was to lead Temple Rodef Shalom's spiritual team, as Rabbi Berkowitz was honored as emeritus, once again, your senior rabbi matched your name. Excuse me. I've known Rabbi Schwartzman since we were rabbinical students together at the New York campus of Hebrew Union College, HUC, in New York. Amy was a year ahead of me and had already distinguished herself with a commitment to seeking love and pursuing peace. She was a Rodef, or Rodefet in the feminine, Shalom, from way back when. Rabbi Schwartzman, as a student, was one of 3 students to found a soup kitchen at the college, which still is in operation today. This, I must tell you, is no ordinary soup kitchen. A spirit of dignity and intentionality pervades every act. Those who are hungry come and eat and are treated with respect from the moment they line up to be served. Students and additional volunteers from the community at large greet our guests with a warm welcome. They are ushered into a dining room set with round tables adorned with tablecloths and napkins. Cantorial students serenade the guests as rabbinical and education students and volunteers wait tables, delivering heaping portions of food, pouring beverages, and chit-chatting with our guests. Already, as a student rabbi, your own Rabbi Schwartzman was creating a model of human decency, represented by a soup kitchen that persists today. You might say, oh, thank you. Thank you. I do appreciate that. That's good. See what I mean? Good people. Rodef Shalom. Thank you. Already as a student rabbi, your own Rabbi Schwartzman was creating a culture of human decency, represented by a soup kitchen that persists today. You might say that she was in training to join the clergy team at Temple Rodef Shalom, where pursuing peace is in your DNA. That she should serve here for 33 years, including 11 as your senior rabbi, is beshert, meant to be. In 2012, when she was elevated to lead the clergy here, she said, and these are her words, "It's a Jewish expectation that we do not stay insular. We are obligated to nurture the tradition we've inherited and contribute to the larger community. To have a congregation that doesn't have a presence in the greater community would not be in keeping with Jewish tradition." her words. Over 6 decades, 60 long years, your congregation has distinguished itself and remained true to your name. Some of you directed the Falls Church McLean Children's Center at the Lemon Road School. Rabbi Berkowitz was a founding member of the Arlington Hospice. And as mentioned, you were one of 3 founding faith communities of the Chesterbrook residences. Just last month, when an urgent call went out for warm winter clothing for political refugees arriving from Nicaragua, Temple Road of Shalom's response was swift and overwhelming. The authoritarian Nicaraguan government released more than 200 political prisoners in a single day, threw them on a plane, essentially, that arrived through the U.S. State Department at Dulles International Airport. Their light clothing was not appropriate for the Washington, D.C. area weather, and Road of Shalom did not flinch. In less than 48 hours, clothing and shoes poured in from TRS from more than 100 congregants, filling 11 SUVs. I salute you, Temple Road of Shalom, on your 60th anniversary. Your initiative, perseverance, and good work inspire me. I pray that you continue to embody your name so that the culture of compassionate generosity that you have fostered over 6 decades will lead others to join you. When you reach 120 at Me'av Esrim, and your descendants look back, as we have done this afternoon, may they know that they have followed in the footsteps of good people. Thank you. So we have some time. Before I answer questions, I'd like to do a little bit of more interaction with the person you're sitting next to on your row, whatever. Let's take 10 minutes. I want to give you a question to consider, to think about, all you good people. I want to imagine ourselves 60 years from now. I want to imagine how you might have put your values at work in the next 60 decades based on the 6 decades that have already come. So just turn to somebody near you. It could be 1, 2 in pairs, triplets, whatever it is. We'll take 10 minutes, and then I'm going to come around, sort of Oprah style, I've been told, and we'll talk as a community. What are the 3, say, projects you can imagine happening? What are the 3 pressing issues that this community might address in its second 60 years? So it's 2:45. At 2:55 exactly, I'll come back on and I'll roam around and we'll get some ideas going. And then I'll also answer any questions you might have about the history. So 2:45, 10 minutes. Folks, I just want to give you a 2-minute warning, okay? 2 more minutes, and then I'm going to start progressing around. I know. Right here. We can take it off of this. Okay, so between the two of us. Hello? Okay, folks, let's regather as a community here. I think there were a lot of interesting conversations going on. I know I had one with the Sifes up at the front. I learned a lot in a few minutes. I thank you for your attention, and this is a great schmoozing crowd. I think there were lots of different comments. I wonder if anybody wants to share anything from their group. I'm going to call on people. I'm going to be very strict with time, so lots of people have a chance to speak, okay? So I'll give you like 30 seconds or so, and then I'll move on to the next person, or if there's a question to me, I'll respond. So I want to be very, I'm under. I'm in the committee. Please tell us your name, sir.
My name is, can you hear me okay? Yeah. My name is Joseph Gordon. I'm a proud member of the mic. My name is Joseph Gordon, and I've been a proud member of this congregation for over 40 years. And thank you very much for the excellent presentation. However, I have a question about, you are supposed to talk about prejudice. And I had a question about prejudice. Is that out of line? You can ask a question. Okay. Well, you know, I go to many Christian services because I like to sing, besides in this choir. And I'm always disturbed on Good Friday. Who killed Jesus? Everybody gets up and says, the Jews. Today, you go right down the street in a very liberal church where I like to sing. And that's still, how do we deal with that prejudice that it is preached, I guess, in every church still, that we killed Jesus.
So it's an important question from Joseph Gordon. Yep, I understand. The question was, based on the Pride and Prejudice model, the title, how do we deal with that? How do we deal with that prejudice straight on, a misreading, a misguided sense of history? I'm a historian. I go back to the sources. I would be willing, you know, as a Jewish professional, and maybe, you know, if you go year after year to a place, to sit and read the Gospels with people, right? And ask them, you know, are you taking this literally? Do you believe, you know, this to be a historical document or a mythological document on which beliefs are based? And they're two different things. So I'm going to get to some other questions. I'm glad to speak with you further. Just, I'm going to move on. There was a lot of hands, and I just want to be fair to people. Okay, let's go over here. Greg?
Well, we understood you to ask 3 ways that we're going to continue to Roda Shalom. So our 3 ways are, we need to continue to pursue democracy in Israel, even though they may not want us to help them pursue democracy, but that doesn't matter because that is our value and we care deeply about Israel. We need to pursue it. We also, number 2 is we also need to pursue democracy in the United States, here in the U.S. We are splitting apart, and it is hurting our form of government, and it's hurting the way we live, and we need to pursue democracy and compromise and a way to work together. And then number 3 is beyond racism, we are splitting apart in so many ways. We need to worry and work about the economic divide among our people, the income divide that is getting worse and worse and worse, and hurting our democracy so terribly, so badly. We need to work on that and the effect it has on our social fabric. And understand that we are all cousins, including all of the people who are coming to the U.S. today, escaping from terror, and we are all cousins, and we need to work and support one another.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me see more comments. We go back to this side. Hands up. I see one in the back. Maybe if I put my glasses on, I'll see better. Any hands here? Anybody want to make a comment? Yes. Debbie.
Yes, what worries me is our youth, because we've taught them so well at Temple Road of Shalom the Jewish values of being a good, kind human being, and all people are created equal, and humanism and universalism, and so the kids are now saying, so why do I need Judaism?
Yeah, the vulnerability of the younger generation, yes. And, you know, I mean, just reminding them, everybody heard the question, what do we teach our children to confront the hatred that they may face when they've been taught everybody's created in God's image. So, you know, there should be partnership among human beings and not divisiveness. Is that? And, you know, I think you have 900 kids in your religious school. Can you imagine what they're taking in by watching the models of adulthood here? You know, there's a way subtly, right, to plant seeds in kids and people's minds, for that matter. And just in the, 36 hours I've been here, I feel it. I feel the sense about protecting oneself, about being honest about the way of the world. It is a very insulated, probably, environment here. A lot of love, a lot of concern, a lot of care. It's true of lots of parents of my generation and the ones after me and before me. I think instilling in them their own sense of worth is the best way, I think, to protect them from what's really out there and for them to continue to understand. I don't underestimate how difficult it is, I think, for the kids of our generation. I think going off to college, Israel was already mentioned, and what they might have to combat. And, you know, everything starts with the particular, and as Jews, we know that really well. You know, having a firm sense of self and individuality and being grounded in our Jewish values really puts you in good stead, I think, for going out and facing it. It doesn't make it easy, but it makes it. It provides a cushion. Provides a cushion.
So I'm Lisa Sockett, and with Andy Joskow and Lynn Lotenberg and Joan Smith, one of the things that we did is we thought, well, what has changed between 1962 and now? And based on that, how can we extrapolate? And one of the things that we said that has changed is the inclusion of women and breaking down barriers to the inclusion of more and more people to participate in Judaism. And so I said, so we've been really successful at that. So what is going to be 60 years out? What other barriers do we have to break down and overcome? And Andy Joskow, who happens to be my husband, he made the very good comment that, well, we need to perhaps look beyond being such a white congregation and movement, and look to be more inclusive of people from different backgrounds and to be more diverse. And that led me to say, and maybe this is too radical, I actually think that we need to go out more into the world to tell people about Judaism as a faith and as a community. I know it's called proselytizing, but not to be proselytizers, but to make people aware of what our religion and what our community can be, and to be welcoming to lots of other people. We were also worried that it was going to be too hot out to meet, and that we possibly will be meeting in virtual reality. And we said 60 years from now, we'll still be talking about anti-Semitism, unfortunately.
Wow, very, very thought-provoking. There are surveys being done now. Up until 5 years ago, when surveys were done of the Jewish people, the Jewish population of America, there were often not questions asked about race, right? About how people identify themselves. And that's because the assumption was that all Jews are white. And we know that not to be the case. And there's something like, I mean, it's a little sketchy, the numbers, but between 12 and 14% of the Jewish population of America across the board are people of color. Whether that means they have a parent of a Latino background, they're Sephardi, they have a parent who's of African American descent. But the numbers are beginning to come in that meet with the reality. And I think it's real. And it's people who are either born Jewish or people who convert into Judaism, their children. There's so many interfaith families, I don't need to tell you that. But and multi-faith families, I would call it, rather than inter. But I really think that's the issue on the horizon. And I think it's real, and I think it's profound, and I thank you for bringing it up, among the others that you said. Let me go out into the gentleman over here.
Hi, I'm Ramon Flores, and we had Rana, Eva, Joe. And we talked about 3 issues that promote pursuing justice and peace, and the pursue peace strategies to promote democracy and transform strategies to fight anti-Semitism. Second is educate self and others about what the Yom Shoah taught us to fight anti-Semitism and build community. And by building community, education for a more equitable society. And finally, practice interfaith activities and legislative initiatives that will promote Jewish values.
Thank you, Ramon. Yeah, I mean, we're hearing echoes here, which, you know, where there's a communal appetite, you know, around some of these issues. I think we have time for 1 or 2 more.
My name's Karen Minicelli, and Ava Flores and I spoke. And we started the conversation with there's a lot of fear that is behind the racism, the divisions, the anti-democratic motives. And what we wanted in our pursuit the next 60 years is a way, training in how to talk to one another across the divisions. That's the only way we'll understand each other and show the respect that's needed, rather than demonizing.
That makes a lot of sense. I think it fits with the question over here about the kids, right? It's not just our kids who need to be educated and guarded against or defend, but how do we handle it? I mean, that's what we opened with, right? I mean, Joseph's comment about, I hear it even today, that the Jews are responsible for Jesus' death. You know, how do I combat that? How do I help people to come around to understand, you know, who the Jewish people are and what we're about today? And we are so diverse, and there's no one answer. So yes, let me come over here. I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more.
Hi, I'm Sarah Jacobs. I've been a member since 2013, I want to say. And I talked with Steve Kenny, and then I brought this guy along. He's a guest. And we talked about our 3 issues being dreamers. And I know we do a lot for dreamers, but we need to do so much more. DACA kids, and that's radical for me to say since I work at CIS, but disability rights, we do a lot. We can do a lot more. We do a lot. We can do a lot more. And then, would you say homeless, Steve? Homeless. The homeless. But I'd say Dreamers, DACA recipients, and disability rights for me, at least, are top two, maybe even together, and then.
Thank you. I'm hearing a theme here, too, about the disenfranchised, right? And how this community has always been on the forefront of helping those in need. And what I find so inspiring in your congregation, and its history, I mean, I learned a lot, obviously, in preparing for today, but you don't just talk the talk, you walk the walk. Like, you mean it. You show up. And that's really inspiring. Yes, Batya.
Hello, my name is Batya. In our group, we talked about the importance of recognizing children from families that have parents of multiple faiths as both Jewish and the other faith, rather than half and half. And then another thing that I didn't really share in our group, but something that's really important to me, is the departing of the established Jewish American establishment from unconditional support of the state of Israel and having more accurate education in, religious school of kind of the ugly history of the establishment of the state of Israel and the current apartheid and occupation in the West Bank, and having that not be a surprise once they leave Jewish education, but something that we talk about throughout upbringing our kids, so that it's not a shock, like a violent shock to them when they leave, but something that we can prepare them for, to grapple with, and kind of be honest with them as they grow up.
Thank you for that comment. Batya and I met before the service. Batya's working on a thesis, in fact, as a senior at Wesleyan, about anti-Zionism in religious communities, and so from what you speak. Thank you. I'm going to run over here. I saw a hand. I haven't made my way to this part of the congregation. Yes, somebody's already standing. I'm getting in my steps. This is good.
Yes, Hannah Moore. And Sally and David and I were talking, and I think, so much of what we want to do is predicated on being a strong community. And I think we were talking about some of our strengths and the fact that the last 30 or 60 years, we've sort of created for our children an example of what a healthy Jewish community is. And as they go forth, as they are going forth, they do move, they do go other places, they know what it means to be part of a healthy Jewish community. Some of them are doing their own things Jewishly. They're part of other communities, or they're creating small groups of Jewish people, children like ours in their 20s and early 30s, who are doing things Jewishly, and they know what healthy Jewish life is like from being with us. And our hope was that in 60 years, we are a congregation of multi-generation, like we are now. Whether we're the same size or smaller or larger, we don't know, but that we have enough kids, that we have a thriving school that gives it this energy and drive and attracts people, and the older generation and the middle generation, that we don't find ourselves at one end or the other of the spectrum, because we can continue to show our kids what a healthy congregation like, and give ourselves the energy to go out into the world to do what needs to be done, and we have to give ourselves that sustenance. So that's what we were talking about.
Thank you. Thank you. We're going to end on that note. We'll have a chance to reconvene in the other room. I want to thank you for your attention, your comments. I want to thank this congregation for being a beacon. I'm imagining in 60 years, I thought you were going to go to the next iteration of that, which is, imagine if every year from now for 60 years, a congregation like TRS is born, as it was in that building back on that July or June evening. I am really, really thrilled to have met with you, to be with you. I thank you very much. I look forward to talking further afterwards.
Well, I'm going to close out this part of the program, and to begin by thanking Rabbi Balin for her historical review. I learned a ton. I suppose most other people did as well. And for the thoughtful questions she brought to us about what our future and the future of American Judaism will be as we move ahead in years. And that is, by the way, what our second portion of this Pride and Prejudice program will be about in 2 weeks. So I hope that you will come back Friday night and Saturday, the 24th and 25th, to hear Rabbi Jessen and her views on some of those questions. She is the rabbi who works with an organization called Repair the World. So I think you will hear some echoes of some of the values we've been talking about today. I want to also thank everybody, in addition to Rabbi Balin, who helped us today to make this program the success that it is. First, our honorary committee, which was a group of about 15 people who spread the word throughout the congregation about the program, and probably many of you received an invitation from one of them. I want to thank the Adult Education Committee and the many members who volunteered to help run the program today, and all of you who attended, and the staff that works here in the congregation who have been running around setting up tables, breaking things down, getting ready for the next part. And what is coming next, as I think Ellen had referenced earlier, is a very fun, or we hope will be fun, part of today's program. We will be in the social hall. There is a delicious deli nosh, which includes catering by Atman's and beer by D.C. Brow, courtesy of Greg Skoll's son. We have, there will be a raffle, so I hope you have your half of your raffle ticket, because if you can't find that, you can't claim a prize should you win one. And there will be a TRS trivia quiz, which will go over a few of the things that Carole mentioned as well as some others. So we'll see who amongst us is most well-versed in our 60 years of history. And I invite you all to make your way down to the social hall. Just as a courtesy to everybody, please understand this is a nosh, and we're hoping that you will be willing to share it with the rest of the audience. Thank you so much for coming today.